Hello, today's video is called Maid is Not Our Servant. Today is June 12, 2026. The agenda for today is background, license testimonials, government savings, and final comment. I want to talk about a program that exists in Canada since 2016 called Maid, and is a short form for medical assistance in dying. It was led by the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Castro, and it was approved by the Supreme Court of this country. And it has had an evolution. It was originally supposed to be for people who were about to have a natural death, and they were so close that it was simply a matter of helping them to process and move on to the next stage of our existence without having to go through a pain of the degradation of the body. But in 2021, it was expanded for those conditions that are supposed to be without remedy, but they were not supposed to be really close to the natural death. For 2027, the idea is to expand to any type of mental illness. And you can see how it's progressing to make it more easy for people to basically commit, I don't think I can say that word, suicide. So just led by the government. Because when you look at what is a mental illness, is a medical condition that will cause distress or impair a person's ability to function normally for work, for their daily tasks, etc. But in Canada, all that is required is for a doctor to determine that you have a mental illness without even meeting you. I am mostly sure that you have seen this video online about a very young man who had been talking about the overreach of the government in this country. And he was declared by a person that overheard something in a coffee shop. He was forced to mandatory reclusion in a psychiatric ward in British Columbia, one of the provinces here in Canada. So this is really scary, because also in Canada you can see how fast and how accessible is this infamous Maid system. For those of you who are not familiarized with the case, you can stop the screen and then go and search online and find this, because it's really interesting but very disturbing at the same time. So let's talk about the lies that this so-called Maid is supposed to be providing for the citizens, and some testimonials, because I'm just going to mention two, but you can go online and find many more. The official version of "It's Your Life, It's Your Choice," again with that line that it only applies when it's useful for the government to create pain and suffering for us. It's not necessarily when it's my life, it's my body, it's my choice not to be injected. That's not when this is supposed to apply. So in any event, the idea is to have 3 steps. The first one is to put the patient in a state of relaxation, deep coma, and then paralyzing the muscles in the body. But what you're going to see is that in most of the cases and the testimonials, the last portion is not being done. And obviously, I'm sure that this part has also failed to do its job. And the official version also from this website says that those who have attended a Maid, this word I'm not sure if I can be pulled from YouTube, family, loved ones, nurses, clinicians describe the provision as peaceful, calm, and the person drifted off to sleep. So it sounds really romantic and beautiful, and actually quite loving to let somebody go when there is such a level of suffering that there's not something you wish for somebody you care for. But a study from 2022 for only one portion of the DEATHS. I'm not sure I can say these words in YouTube anymore, because again, I live in Canada, censorship, right? So a study that was limited from the total, you can see the complications, and by complications, I'm going to give you specific examples of what it means. 1.2% of the cases were not peaceful, calming, or any type of drifting into sleep. So if you go online, you will find testimonials like this when people are actually making faces, which means they are not really asleep, and I'm assuming they are starting to feel like they are drowning. That's the typical description that you hear and you read from these testimonials, and then they ask for help. Another testimonial, the one from the drive-through story, it's in this case the person actually, after the 3 steps, it was still breathing, and then obviously the process was not followed properly. And sadly, this specific physician who did this horrible assessment in less than 2 hours, and then the person was not even properly KILLED, then this is what happens. Not much, and is still practicing in one of the provinces of Canada. And the question is why? Why is there no consequence? And the answer for me is because he's only slightly ahead of what the government has in place for us as of March 2027. They want to save some money. And the question is why? Well, we're going to see in a moment, particularly how. If you search online, you can see this study. It was published in Feb 28, 2025, so a year and a half ago. And it talks about the ability of the government to save some money, $1.3 trillion by 2047, by doing this. So I find fascinating that YouTube does not allow me to say this word, but the government is planning to do this with us. So that's the reason why I'm being censored, because they don't want us to discuss what the plan is with us. And there are 3 disturbing facts of this. The first one is that this is already top 5 causes of this in Canada. So that's pretty high. In other words, we're not doing this fast enough. The second one is that the economics are in this study are estimated for both voluntary and non-voluntary scenarios. Well, that represents a very problematic aspect of this, because none of these groups in my world or any world should be disposable. But look at what they're doing. If you have these, then you should be KILLED. Same if you are this. Same if you are this. So you're not even allowed to retire in this country anymore, because you're going to be part of this program. And if you are part of the indigenous group as well, which to me is highly offensive to even consider that if somebody was born in this land, then you deserve to be part of this non-voluntary program. I really can't even express my horror when I read these things, because I see a lot of similarities with what happened in Germany in 1933. I'm sure that everyone who has good memory or has read any book about the Second World War, you will see what was one of the first initiatives of HITLER. So here it is. It's exactly the same. And the objective, as I showed, is either billions or trillions. It really doesn't matter. The point is, why is this being discussed by the government? Why aren't we talking about how to save people with issues that are either mental or lack of having a home or lack of food? That should be what we should be discussing, not to solve the problem by applying this Maid program. And the reality is that I don't even know what they're going to be saving, because it's already quite inefficient. You can see in this table the average wait times in the ER. Newfoundland, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Alberta, 3 hours, 48 minutes. Ontario, 4 hours. BC, 4 hours, 13 minutes. And the best of the best, Quebec, 5 hours and 23 minutes. And as you may have noticed from previous videos, I actually live here. And I know for a fact that is the case. And you will also find online testimonials. This is from Winnipeg, on where a lady went simply for the removal of some dead tissue in her knee. And to me, it lacks logic. It went from one place to another place, from a center to a hospital, and then she was supposed to be brought back to a center to just stitch her, and there was not an available bed for her to be brought back, which again, I would have never left that first place, but I don't really understand the logic. And she was left with that open wound for 8 days. So what happens? She lost her leg. I mean, I just don't even understand. How am I supposed to even, and I just don't understand. I'm honestly, a part of me is quite in shock. When I saw this, I thought, there's no way this is real. But it is, and there are many testimonials, because look at the average time that a person needs to wait in Canada for a referral. So I'm not even being treated at that point in time. I'm just saying I need help with this. And then for an orthopedic surgery, that was exactly what took place with this lady, you have to wait almost a year. That doesn't make any sense. Look at the statistics in 1993, you could wait about 9 weeks, which in my world, that's a lot. One of the reasons why I travel so often to Colombia actually is because I do all my surgeries, all my health treatments there. There I go and I say, I need help with this. And within a week, I have an appointment, I have the resolution, and then I fly back and I am okay. And of course, it's not the way it's supposed to be, but there's no way I'm going to expose myself to these type of scenarios, because when I have even gone to the ER personally in a couple of occasions when I have needed help, luckily for me, has been very superficial. In 2023, I hit my leg really, really hard, and I wanted an x-ray to make sure that I didn't break a bone. Even though I was able to walk, there was so much pain. It was just the impact. And at the time, I was living in what is called North Island, that is over here. So I had to drive 30 minutes to the next city. So just think about that for a second. I am paying taxes in one specific city, and when I went to a hospital, the hospital was closed and said, drive to the next city to go to the ER. That doesn't make any sense. Where is the money going to? And then when I arrived, I waited 4 hours, and in those 4 hours, not a single turn was called. In other words, nobody was being helped for 4 hours. And then I was told, when I went to ask for an update or how long do I need to wait, they told me just to come back on Monday. By Monday, my pain was gone, but I was really unimpressed. And then in 2024, I had done a lot of exercise. I adore doing push-ups, and I love them, but they end up pulling some muscles, particularly in my chest. And then I thought I had a heart problem. I had a heart attack or something like that. Luckily for me, it was not like that, but it just taught me once again the inefficiency of the system, because I called 911 and I had to wait 30 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. If I had had a heart attack, I would be dead by then. And after arriving, it took 4 hours to see a doctor. And I don't know if you know this, but I have heard many times that the most urgent cases that are being helped in the ER is when a person has a heart attack and is arriving by ambulance. So this is how fast an emergency is being treated in the province of Quebec. And I'm talking about 2 years ago. So I'm sure it's even worse right now. So the question is, where are our tax money going? And for the first time in my 6 years doing videos, I really don't have a comment. I am really unimpressed. And I hope that Canadians find a way to organize themselves and do something about it, because I really don't know what to say. Thank you very much for listening.